Welcome everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Owen BonDurant. I'm with Independent RX. I'm a partner in the company. Independent RX is a company that helps individuals and pharmacy owners. We help people start and buy pharmacies. We do accounting for pharmacies. And today's topic, we help people sell their pharmacies. And we'll give more information on how to reach us and so forth at the end. This is a housekeeping. You can ask questions in the Q&A down below. We will be monitoring those. We may answer them as we go, but we will leave time at the end to try to answer as many as we can. So today, we're talking about selling to either a private individual or multi-owner versus selling to a chain. Now, your reasons for selling may vary. We have a changing market in pharmacy whereby we're moving more from filling prescriptions to filling plus the clinical side of things, medical billing, etc. It could just be that you've owned a pharmacy for a very long time and are ready to retire. What we do know is hundreds, if not thousands of pharmacies sell every year. So it's not an unusual thing to be thinking about selling your pharmacy. But today, we want to address chain versus private. And if you've owned a pharmacy for any length of time, you've probably been approached by a chain about buying your script files. And selling to a chain kind of has a bad reputation, both from a transaction perspective and the fact that they're our main competition. They're kind of, no one wants to deal with them, but it is a reality, and they are an option for you to, sell your business that you've worked on for many, many years. So today we're just going to take you through kind of the differences. Tim and I are just going to have a discussion around this, go through what all the differences and things that could be the same as well. Luckily, Tim Clark, and he'll let him introduce himself, has had a lot of experience with this. He sold his pharmacies both to chains and to independent or private buyers. So Tim, I'll let you reintroduce yourself there.
Thank you, Owen. My name is Tim Clark. I'm a third generation pharmacist and partner with Owen and Independent RX Consulting. And we also still own some pharmacies together. Still own a compounding pharmacy here in Dayton, Ohio, which does a little bit of retail also. And then we also have a long-term care pharmacy that services group homes, assisted living, and patients that are at home that need specialized packaging. And we're about to open our third pharmacy later this year that will focus on filling prescriptions for cash and generics only. And part of our experience of buying and selling stores, as I've been an owner in about 30 retail stores, and I've gone through the process of acquiring them for me and my partners, and then also looking at selling them sometimes. Sometimes you sell them because your business isn't doing so well. Sometimes you get lucky and you get a strategic buyer who wants the business because they need it for their location. And as Owen and I were kind of discussing some topics to help people when they're considering selling, we thought it'd be really good to just kind of go through the differences of if you're going to make a private sale to someone or sell it to a chain. There's literally advantages and disadvantages to either one of those things. And I think sometimes we put I don't know if it's a bad shadow if you sell it to a chain, but realistically, what I advise people to is your job is to get the greatest value for you and your family. And as we'll go through this discussion, it's not always just value in terms of dollars. I mean, there's other things that happen as we go through the transaction that you'll see that will sometimes make what seemed like a low offer from let's say a pharmacist just wants to buy your store, and we can probably help you compare to what it is to the chain offer. So there's those are the things we want to go through so that you're aware as you're considering what is best for your business. And the first thing I'd always tell you, what's best for your business is for you to run your business really well, because you never know when you're going to need to or want to sell it. So I'll let Owen kind of go through some of the questions.
Yeah, and I
Thank
think
you.
that's good. I mean, when we were preparing for this, there was a lot more differences, both good and bad, than we kind of, I think, thought. So hopefully we can get through all of them, because it really selling to a private group versus a chain is, I mean, it's very different. There are some similarities, but there's a lot of differences. And, one of those is time, right? And the time frame to sell to a chain versus selling to a private buyer. I guess it kind of depends on who your private buyer is, but if it's selling to your PIC and especially if they're going to get a bank loan, maybe if you could talk through the differences there.
Well, if you're going to sell it to a private individual, typically they've got to go get financing. They've got to go through the bank. And as we know, banks have different hoops that we have to follow. Now, when we help people buy a store, I'll tell you that those hoops are important because they're another form of the due diligence to make sure that you don't make a bad business transaction. Now, when you're selling your store, you really don't care about it being a bad transaction for the buyer. In all honesty, you're just trying to see when they can close and how much money can I get. But that person who's buying your store that's going through a bank, they can't help it, but the bank has guidelines that are usually federally, government regulations, and that's what they are, regulations, and that's just the way it is. Our job when we're trying to sell somebody or help somebody sell their store is to get everything we can ready up front so that when we do get a buyer, that the transaction can happen as soon as possible. Now, that's the nice thing is that, when you've got that expectation, which is part of, our job when we're looking at telling you to sell your store, is your expectation of selling to that private individual when it comes to the financing component is totally different than what we would tell you it's going to come from. Let's just call it, the chain buyer, strategic buyer is really someone who is coming to the table with cash and isn't as worried about, the same thing as me if I'm going to go buy this business for my family.
Yeah, so let's talk about a chain. Your typical chain, for example, Walgreens or CVS, they're going to come in, they're going to buy your files, and they're going to move those files to another store. So because of that, they're not as concerned with what does your tax return say? What does your financials say? What is your balance sheet? They may look at those, but it's not the same level of diligence. In addition, they don't care things about like what 401k are you offering? Am I going to keep that? Am I going to switch it to an AR? What benefits? Right? They don't need to worry about keeping your licenses or your insurance contracts. So when they go to evaluate their store, really what they're doing is they're pulling your script data and going, how much money will we make off these scripts? That's their analysis.
And Owen, it is literally that simple. They're pulling the information directly out of our pharmacy system so that they can come up with a logical guess, which they know what they're getting paid for that prescription and what their margin is, and all they're looking at is how's it transfer into their business, and then they make a guess of how much business do we think that we can keep of your business. So the profit of how it is, it's a totally different process. Basically, same thing for you as an individual. I tell you as a pharmacy owner, if you're going to go buy the independent down the street, that's a great idea if you can get it at a, most likely your cash flow on a loan is so much better than buying a new location. And, even as difficult it is to grow, let's say, grow your business from doing, let's say 100 a day to 250 a day. Oh my gosh, the synergies that you have when you do those things, even when you look at it yourself, you'll kind of understand, how does it make sense for a chain to go do that? I mean, they've already got the built-in costs of that location, the personnel, and they're just trying to figure out, if I bring this business in, what do I need to add? And it's not like you and I, when we add the for a location, when you're bolting it on to an existing expense structure. I mean, like, look at your expense structure on your P&L now. If it's $40,000 a month in expenses, if you just had just the personnel component, which is probably maybe a third or 40% of what your expenses are. So there's a lot of ways for the chain to make money.
Yeah. So when they're buying this, I mean, they're going to pull that data, get a little bit more information on your employees. They're going to make an offer. There'll be some negotiation, and then they're going to get you a purchase agreement. And they don't need a bank loan. They're paying you cash. So these things can go fairly quickly. And really the typical holdup is employee issues, and because a lot of times they want to retain employees. So like, because of that, the time frame can be pretty quick. Whereas if we flip over to an individual or even a private buyer, unless it's strategic, they're looking, they've got to evaluate your financial situation. They have to evaluate your mix of business. They have to evaluate, how do you operate? What do I need to improve at the facility? Do I need to improve anything in the facility? They need to get powers of attorney. They need to worry about licensing. Do they need to go to Medicaid and apply to Medicaid for closing? They need to switch over health benefits. They have to set up a wholesale account. There's all this stuff. And then the bank has another 30 items that they have to do. So because of this, it tends to take longer for an individual to buy this, because they're coming in and operating your store, but they need to move it over to them. And some of that stuff has to be done before they close. And along those lines, it creates more work for you. When you settle a chain, you get them some data, you review the purchase agreement, you close. Whereas on the buyer side, on the private buyer side, I mean, like, the buyer doesn't have your health benefit program. They don't have your licenses. They don't have your financials. They don't have any of this information. So you need to provide it all to them. And then plus the SBA, when they're doing bank loans, requires that the seller, sign off on certain things and provide certain information, et cetera. So, the amount of work that's going to be placed on you to sell to a private person is considerably more than a chain. Would you agree, Tim?
I think as we have been discussing this topic internally, everything takes less time with the chain.
Yeah.
So, their holdup is, their only holdup ever is, do they have the staff in place to handle the acquisition on the ground?
Yeah.
That is their only. And I guess right now, I'd tell you, it would be summer vacation time, because as you try to get deals and things done during this period of time, it's, there's 2 periods of time that are hard to get a deal done. The end of the year, when you've got Christmas and vacations, from Thanksgiving to Christmas, it's really hard. And then summer, because it's kind of hit or miss of getting people together. But the chains have again, the advantage of them is that they've done the acquisition before. Right. Like, they typically know what to look for, and they have different worries. When you're selling it, I guess that's why, I think that, we developed into that. We've got a job and we've got a company, is that, our advantage is that we see multiple, like over, hundreds of transactions. So, even though sometimes we'll have a new wrinkle come into a transaction, the fact that we've seen this before makes it easier for us to say, is this logical or not logical or emotional? Now, a lot of the things that happen to selling to either selling, I don't know if we're going to go with this, Owen, but when you're selling to a chain or you're selling to a private individual, they're both emotional.
Yep. Yeah, and that is a similarity, right? They're emotional for different reasons, but they're going to be emotional regardless.
They are.
And
I used to think it would be easier not to sell to a chain emotionally, but then when you sell to someone who's going to be, let's say, an owner operator, I mean, then you've got all the things that you just have. You're going to be in that deal for a while.
Yeah, and let's talk about that, because one of the reasons it becomes emotional and one of the reasons you end up staying in the deal longer is employees. Right. And right. I mean, a lot of times these employees have worked for you for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And, when you sell to the chain, a lot of times they're not going to hire all those people. Right. They will be out a job. And so that is a tough decision. Or they're going to take a job with a chain that they could have had, but chose not to. And it's just not as good a job typically. Whereas if you sell it to an individual, a lot of times most of the jobs are kept. But that new person needs you to help them transition as their new boss. Right. Even if it's a PIC, for example, there's a difference between seeing your pharmacy manager and now becoming the owner. Like it's important for that person to be successful. Yeah.
Oh, well, any of these transactions, either way, you've got a cultural change and switch. There's no way that going to work for the chain is going to be the same thing as working for me. And there's no way that, working for me is going to be the same as working for Bob Ross.
Yeah.
Everybody has different styles and expectations. And we as employees, because, I was an employee for Walgreens. I was an employee for a hospital. I was an employee for my dad. So, I know how it feels to be an employee. You're trying to stay out of your boss's radar unless you're trying to get a promotion. But either way, as you're going through that sale process, I guess here's the given. You should just know that this is going to be different for your staff, and you may have to do some hand holding for different individuals. You may have to do some encouraging, but no matter what they say to you, you are not a bad person that is selling your pharmacy. You are, no one said you were a bad person, 3 months ago when you sold your Apple stock. Like no one would ever say that you were bad, that you sold, John Deere, or that you sold, Blockbuster stock, before it tanked. I mean, the thing that not that you can make it like so unemotional, but you got to use some logic in your own thinking, or you'll create paralysis of, you end up not selling because you're overthinking it. The advantage of using somebody again, like someone like me to help you sell your business is that, it's my job to protect you. It's my job to talk to you about that things that you're going to think of going through the sale, and that you're going to have to call me because no one else will understand how upset you are or worried you are. Like your spouse will not understand that, your kids, your other employees, your buddies. No one's going to understand it than someone who's actually been through it. So now they can provide you really good, your support system. But truly understand that this is what you're going through, and to make you feel better. That's what you're going to face when you're selling it to that guy or the chain. You're just going to have those employees. thoughts in your head.
And along those lines, from an employee and emotional standpoint, typically when you sell to a private buyer, they're just going to inherit those employees. Typically, I mean, there may be cases where they have to let someone go or, this or that. Whereas the chains, they may try to hire a couple of people, but they also may try to put non-competes on your employees, which become a tough conversation because they kind of put it back on you, right? Like you, the seller, they go to you and go, hey, you need to get a non-compete for your head person.
That
And
you've never had a non-compete for. Like you've
right.
never.
Yeah. So it can cause two problems is one, you've never had a non-compete. You've got an employee that doesn't want to sign one and, is like upset that, they're probably going to have to work for the chain. In addition to that, the chain may also make you pay them to enforce the non-compete. And so that may cost you money and be kind of part of your overall wind, like your take home, right? I mean, in the end, one of the big things we're looking at is how much money am I going to keep when I sell my business? And well, if you've got to pay 10 grand to an employee, that's 10 grand less that you get to keep.
And really that's the basis of making the decision to sell your business is how much you're going to get to keep. And so my job is to make sure that you have an idea of what you're going to keep and what those expenses are, no matter who you sell it to. Because even if you sell it to a chain, the chain can have a caveat in there that there's a retention formula that's associated to how much you're going to get, or that there's a down the road kind of payments that they're going to offer. The best way to look at what someone's offering you is, looking at it, on a simple piece of paper with or an Excel spreadsheet, looking at this is what they're offering, this is what I'm going to get, and then kind of going through what are the things that change the value of something. Like you bring about the employees. Like, okay, if the employees are going to go, one of the things that we talk about is the fact that, okay, if the employees don't go, are you then, Mr. Pharmacy owner, responsible to pay out vacation? There's a chance that you, because you got a good heart and you're thinking, oh, I got to pay Mary, she's been here 20 years, I'm going to pay out her vacation or whatever. We've got to talk about what are those employee costs that you're going to now incur in this. It's not as simple as let's say you go getting $500,000 from them. Like, that's not where the money ends. There's always somebody along the line who's taking it, whether it's your attorney, your employees,
Well, I mean, there's a lot of it. I think this is a good point because, like, from a chain, let's say you're getting $1 million, they may hold back 200 based on retention. So then you start going, okay, if they don't hit the retention, I'm only going to get 100 of that 200. So I'm really getting 900. And then I have to pay a non-compete to my pharmacist. So there goes another 10 grand. Then I got to pay my attorney 10 grand. Oh, and by the way, they're moving the scripts out of my building and I have a lease that still goes for another 2 years. So I've got to pay another 100 grand out to my lease over the next 2 years. Oh, and oh, wait, hold on. The chain's not going to buy my OTC inventory, so I don't get that. And so like really putting it into a spread of, what are my wind down costs? Because, sometimes pharmacy systems also have a contract. So you got to pay that out. Maybe you've got a pro rata and you have to pay out the rest of the maintenance fee. So, these are things that can happen on a chain, whereas a private buyer is going to take all this stuff over, right? They're going to take over, your lease, your pharmacy system, the pro rata,
your delivery car,
yeah.
all your fixtures, all the time it takes for you to clean up your store. They're going to take over all the typically, all the employees. you're not to have to worry about canceling I guess your internet provider, your telephone provider, like you say, your pharmacy system provider, your pest control provider, your shredded provider, because they're going to take over all those kind of contracts and responsibilities. I mean, that's the beauty of getting somebody to come in and take over your business is better. I mean, it truly is better for you. The thing that I always try to do when I talk to somebody, Owen, is, I explain to them that our first thing is we're going to try to sell to somebody, that's a pharmacist or owns a pharmacy around you, because, if we could get that to happen, that helps you emotionally. And with all these wind downs, after the transaction, it helps you with all that time that's sucked away from the excitement that I just sold my business, or whatever you're going to do for your retirement. I mean, you're stuck there. But
Yep.
we know, for instance, that a chain is typically going to buy a business. I mean, if you've got a chain near you, there's someone and they're going to buy you. I don't know what they're going to pay you, because they could pay you $3 a script. They could pay you $25 a script. I don't know. It all depends on how good or how crappy that store is, or how good or how crappy your mix of business is. The reality is that, like,
and I think that's a big change in the market, right? Because 5 years ago, chances are the chain was going to pay more. And so it was
chances
like,
were, yes.
yeah, and they were going to pay more. And so that decision became a whole lot more, well, a lot tougher, because, the reason you would sell to a chain is because a lot of times it used to be that you could just get that much more money. So it's like, okay, I'll go through the pain of the emotional side because just simply because I'm going to get more money. But if all things are equal and there's no wind down costs, you've really got to start looking at, okay, can I find a private buyer that can potentially get me more take home dollars, and keep my business going?
And ideally, that's, hopefully what you get to go through. All of our hope is that, we've got a good enough business that, more than it's like selling a house. You really want more than one person to be able to buy this business. And as long as you as the seller have it in the back of your mind that, okay, it's not as simple as saying, I'm not going to date somebody with red hair.
Yep.
Like you can't have so many people come to me, say, oh, I do not want to sell to a chain. Well, dude, I don't want you to sell to a chain either, unless they obnoxiously pay you. Like, I agree, but we can't start off the conversation saying that we're never going to sell to a chain. Typically what I'll say is, hey, for the first month, let's say the first month at least, let me go talk to our contacts to find you someone who would like to give you a fair, serious offer.
Right. But
because the thing that Owen brought up earlier, which is true, is that the people who could buy your store and possibly be the best people for you, they're going to take longer to buy it.
Yep.
Like the problem, if I start off and I call, the chain up, say, hey, Mr. Publix, I want to sell this to you, or Mr. Walgreens, whatever. I mean, they can get back with me in a couple weeks or less sometimes. So, like at the very beginning of your thought of selling your pharmacy, I think that's why we came up with this is the topic, is that, I think we all focus on just thinking the focus is selling our business, but it's not just selling your business. There's like so many things. It's not just picking your hobby. It's just not, calculating what the number is. There's a lot more attention to detail than you think. Selling your house actually is a very emotional transaction, right? But really, those transactions are so much easier than selling a pharmacy. I mean, like, if you look at like buying a house, you go into there with the, here's the documents, the purchase agreements, and here's the inspection things that we have to go through that could make the deal go through. Here's our financing contingencies. All those things are day one, but when you are into the whole pharmacy thing, even dealing with the chain, they don't typically give us that purchase agreement on day one.
Yep.
Typically, they will send us again some, and I'm going to say it's not worthless, but it's not when someone's writing you a letter of intent, it's not an enforceable legal document. It's basically telling you, whether it comes for a chain or it comes from me, Tim Clark, it's really saying, I would like to date you by you.
Yep.
And for you, one of the things that we have to make you prepared for is the fact that is like just the first step in the thing. And you as the seller, the thing that you can really do that would help yourself is to, talk about, confident. Don't tell everybody in the world that you want to sell your pharmacy.
Yeah.
Because if you go do that, you're going to put yourself in like risk that your employees think that you're selling and then they don't have to work as hard, or that you're not important with your wholesaler anymore because, look, Jim Bob over here is going to sell. So, now ABC doesn't want to do you the returns or the credit that you asked for that they normally would have done because now you're not so important. So trying to keep these things as close to your vest with your confidential people is so important, especially before you list it. Now, when you list it, I'm sorry, that's when it gets dangerous because people talk. Whether you're talking at a chain or you're talking to Bob down the street to buy your business, and I know we're all so skeptical of either the chain looking at buying it or Bob down the street. But the fact of the matter is, we're dealing with people. As soon as we get outside of our little cocoon of that I want to sell, and we start involving these other people, then there's a chance that your employees or someone else or your mother, is going to find out that your business is for sale and you didn't even tell anybody.
Yeah. And those are risks to it, but you do, so many people just want to go, oh, I want to have this one person, but you don't really know what you can get for your business if you don't get a bid from the chain. You don't get a couple buyers who put it out there. And if you don't put it out there, I mean, there's occasions where you get a strategic buyer that'll just way overpay for it. So you do have to take a little bit of risk and get it out there. The other thing that you don't know is we talked about leases, but what if you own the building? The chain's not buying your building. So sometimes you have to look at the full acquisition and go, wait, I've got this individual that can buy the building, can buy my business, buy the inventory. They can take on everything, and that might be a better overall purchase for me than if I sold to a chain and then tried to sell the building. I mean, what if you can't sell the building or you can't lease it, and now you're kind of stuck for a couple of years until you can get that done, or it's most valuable to that person buying the pharmacy, right?
No, as you know, in our experience, though, and when we sold some of our stores and we owned them, okay, it was great that we owned the building. I mean, there's no doubt, as a financial plan, you owning some of your pharmacy buildings or your own pharmacy building, that's a good part of your plan. I mean, because that rent going to yourself, that's all great and fine. Anybody who told you to do that is not an idiot. That was a wise thing to do. But as Owen's talking about, when you're selling it, then you got to think about what's going to happen. So when we sold ours, I ended up, some of them were easy that I got, let's say, I think, one building I had, a bank bought it, and they, the nice thing about it was there was no threat to the person who had bought my pharmacy that they were going to go put a pharmacy in there. Because that's when you're going through a transaction to sell your business, everybody's worried about the current location. Yep. So you have to have that current location that you own, or even if you lease, I mean, you have to go to your landlord and ask for a pharmacy exclusion.
Yep.
So, you can't tell me that, going to Joe down the street who owns your building isn't going to go tell his wife and 30 of their friends that, I'm selling my pharmacy.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, and that's when you sell to the chain, right? So if you sell to a chain, a lot of times almost every time they want the landlord to put in writing that they will not rent it to another pharmacy for a period of time. And that sometimes can be hard. Sometimes they ask for money. And so sometimes they won't do it. So again, I mean, this isn't saying you can't sell to the chain, but like these are the things that they request. And again, if you sell to an individual, they're going to move into into the building. And if you have the building, sometimes you can't sell it. And you definitely can't rent it to another pharmacy. And so, you may have to do some like TI in order to get it rentable and things like that. So those are other factors that come in, and also that building can factor into a private buyer's valuation. And I guess that's the valuations also are completely done differently, and it'd be a whole nother webinar. But in short, again, the chains are looking at your scripts and placing a value on each one of those scripts based on what they think they can retain and what profitability they have. They don't care if you're making money or not, right? Whereas an individual who's coming in, or even a multi-store owner, they're looking at cash flow and they're going, what is your current cash flow? How much can I pay and then still service the debt and make some money, right? And so they value them completely different. And the reason that the building can factor in is if they buy the building, a lot of times they can get longer terms, which lowers their monthly payment. And so they might be able to pay a little bit more because they have the building. And so it kind of all factors into these things. So, but whereas the chain is just like, all right, we make this much off the scripts and here's what the value is. And so those are all things that, again, you don't necessarily need to think about completely, but think about them, and it might be a reason to get bids from more than one party.
Right. And that's where, I think even when we look at on the other side of our job, helping someone buy a store, I get so frustrated that people don't think about the fact of getting multiple bids is unless you got a bad store, you should be able to get multiple bids so that you can make a really good decision, or even better yet, that then you have some negotiating power. Because like, let's say I've got a store and I've got a decent offer from, we'll say CVS, and I'm looking at selling it to a medicine shop, Medicap, or whoever down the streets. Like, I don't think that the chain really wants me to sell it to another independent either. I mean, there's now the part of their calculation simply is that if there's a chain near you, or excuse me, another independent near you, there's less retention that the chain is going to get. But you don't know we don't know the P&L and the operations matrix of the person buying our business, because in some instances, like just a little bit more business can now put them in, the black as a store instead of the red. The chains have, you think we as independent, pharmacists have it hard. I mean, they put their whole thing on being convenience, and they had this thing, that's hit them through the whole pandemic, called Amazon. Now what they used to do for me and my family and your family, is not the same. I mean, you can go online and get all that same stuff that you would have gotten at the chain, and you can get better service, a better selection, and their business model is such that, what was it, today or yesterday, Owen, that was it Walgreens announced that they're closing like 150 stores.
But then they turned around and bought 200 Brookshires and closed those down.
Yeah.
So you I mean, that's a perfect example. You don't know in your market, you know,
what that's value is.
yeah, and
So
what their
you
motivation
never
is. Because
asked.
remember, there's people that work at these places and they have targets and they have goals, and they may be over those goals, they might be under, they might get commissioned off this, they might not. So like, let's say they're supposed to grow it or add X amount of revenue, and if they hit that, they get this huge bonus. Well, they might be desperate to buy this thing at any price. So like, you've got to kind of look at all these things, and you just never know. So it's not a simple calculation. We do know that most individual buyers are going to look at cash flow and they're going to go, hey, here's your cash flow, and this is what I can pay for it. But things like the building, things like seller notes, I mean, all that stuff factors into what they can pay.
Well, it's funny that as we talk about, those bigger companies that could buy it. I mean, they have things that, every quarter they've got to make these earnings estimates.
Yeah.
So in some way, buying your pharmacy is kind of like the guy at the used car lot. I mean, there's sometimes better times to sell your pharmacy than there is. That beginning of the month, not a good time because no one has to make a deal, but to get something done,
yeah.
I guess here's what I'd like you guys to do, pharmacists and pharmacy owners that are looking at selling. Don't be so firm that I've got to go sell it to X. You've got to open it up that it could be X, Y, Z, or a combination of. Maybe you have compounding and you've got retail. Maybe you're going to sell your compounding business, which has much greater value to a strategic buyer and an independent buyer. Like, right. You don't want to sell maybe the whole thing to that one person. It could be that you're going to sell this year. I'm going to sell my retail business to the chain because I can get a decent amount of money. But then I know that when I sell the compounding business to somebody else, let's say my margin is going to look better. My profitability could look better.
Yep.
Like there are all those things of dissecting your business. Let's say if you've got a combo shop, maybe your combo shop should have been a combo shop, Owen. Maybe you should have had you should have had 2 licenses, or maybe you should get to the point before you sell of getting the 2 licenses, because maybe you really should just keep the the long-term care and get rid of the retail. Like it's not as simple as this is what I need to do. It requires a conversation.
Yeah, and every market's different, and there's just a lot of changes, and things like inventory too can factor into all of this, because the chains value inventory different than individuals. So sometimes you'll get more for your inventory by selling to a chain than you will to an individual, but the chains also typically don't buy OTC items. So like if you have a huge OTC, well, you're going to have to sell that. I don't know what you're going to do with it.
Well, I guess I hope none of you have a large OTC.
Yes, but some people do. So, those are different things. Also, asset versus stock sale. A chain is an asset sale. They're buying the script file assets in the inventory, whereas an individual can do asset and stock. So sometimes as a seller, a stock sale will net you more money because you'll pay less taxes. And so that's also a factor that comes in. And going back to what you said earlier of just taking a simple spreadsheet and going, taxes is one of those lines. Oh, with a chain, I pay this tax. With this individual, I pay this tax. Right. And that all factors into what did I get at the end of the day? Yeah.
Yeah, the number, when you start adding it all up, I mean the number that it is you can get pretty close of guessing what those numbers are going to be.
Yep.
And I don't know if you have to go through the complete brain damage of knowing every little dollar to the cent, before you sell. The more important thing is to, as you're thinking about it, being logical, these are the things that actually do cost me money, like getting out of my lease costs me money, selling my business costs me money. Or when I'm selling my business to another owner, and like you were saying, TI things that need to be done, which is tenant improvement things. So if I'm going to buy Owen's building and I notice that, okay, it hasn't been painted in here for 30 years, the carpet has holes in it, there's leaks in the roof, all these things. I'm not just looking at your business, I'm looking at how much money does Tim Clark have to put into this business I bought, because I don't want to buy something that's, unless you make a really lot of money, that's going to decrease your purchase price to an individual buying your store.
Yep.
Because like when they have to go get the loan to buy your business, they're going to have to then add another $20,000 for tenant improvements or something.
Yeah.
The chain or another buyer doesn't. Or again, we say chains, but there's also people, strategic buyers who I'll call multi-store owners or hospital systems. Heck, we've worked with DoorDash. I mean, there's people that you'd never think that would want to own a pharmacy that want to own a pharmacy.
Yeah, and they are looking at it even completely different than the chain and the individual. So, it may just fit into their strategic, and they may keep your employees. It could be kind of a combination of the chain and the individual. They keep your employees, they, take over your lease, they do all kinds of things. So there's different types of buyers out there. And, part of this, I think, is just understanding what matters to you too. And having in the back of your head, okay, this is important to me. So, if all things are equal, I'm going this route. Right. And I mean, I'm not saying like spend, hours and hours and hours, but just kind of going like, if all things are equal, would I rather do a stock versus an asset, or would I want to keep my employees, or, those kinds of things? Or is it, getting it done as quickly as possible? I just don't want to go through the emotional roller coaster for, 4 to 6 months. I'd rather just get it done. So, yeah.
And most people, by the time they get to us that want to sell, are very emotional. Mm-hmm. They're very emotional because they just they're done. They've done their last dance, and right now they're just walking around the dance floor with a rollator walker and just feel like, gosh, I just want to get off the floor. And that's all fine, and you can think that way, but the reality is that you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. You've got to like, you can do a lot of stuff about what you got going on today, but you can do very little to what's going to happen tomorrow. And the only thing I can tell you is that confidentially talking to people before you're going to do it is going to give you answers to a lot of the questions that you're having. And don't just talk to me and God, please just don't talk to, let's say, your wholesaler or one person, because everybody has a different viewpoint, and they're all strategically, they can help you. Like if that chain guy's coming in, talking about buying your business, there's no reason not to talk to him.
Yeah, you can tell him no.
I would not trust him to do a deal by yourself, because you've never gone through a transaction. That makes absolutely no sense to me. I mean, they will, I can guarantee you, like me or another broker should be able to pay for our fee to help you sell to a chain, because they know that you've never done this.
Yeah.
they don't have it. They
Agreed.
They can tell you that, oh, well, why would you pay that to somebody to help you? I mean, because that's only because they've done like, hundreds of transactions themselves. That's the only reason why they'd say that. Your wholesaler is a good person to talk about. I would never tell my wholesaler that, I'm selling tomorrow, I would always tell them with the saying, hey, how's the market looking if I would sell in the next couple of years? Because then they will tell you what they know about what's going on. They will also let you know who's buying in your area.
Yep.
But you don't want to put them into the thing of leading the sale of your business, because they also are in a different position. They're about to lose your business. Your wholesaler is about to lose your business. Yes, they also are aligned with you that we want to sell it to a private individual, which is great. I mean, and like if we one of the people we call, like when we've got a store for sale, is we do call the wholesalers to get them involved to make them know. But you can't just let, I guess in your head to sell this, you've got to put it up for multiple buyers and multiple opportunities.
Yeah.
Like it really is in your best interest of whether you're selling it to a chain or you sell it to a private individual. It's just,
yeah.
I
So,
don't know.
we've done a lot of talking. I don't know if everyone heard, but we do have a Q&A at the bottom. And so if you have questions, please submit them and we can spend the next 10 minutes trying to answer any questions that may be out there. And as we wrap that up, we will, if you want to revisit this, we will be posting this to our website, independentrxconsulting.com. And it will also be on our YouTube channel. We will be sending out an email once that is posted. And if you want to reach us, I'm at Owen@independent-rx.com. Tim is at Tim@independent-rx.com. Or you can visit our website and submit an inquiry there. Is there any other thoughts you have, Tim, of kind of chain versus private, things that people should be thinking about?
Well, this is true that you've got a good asset that is saleable. These prescriptions, these patients that you've taken care of, they are an asset. Just like I mentioned about, let's say, an Apple stock. You've got some stock that other people want to buy. Your thing to do is to try to keep it as good as you can, keep it as fresh as you can, have it growing as well as you can, so that when it comes to time that you want to sell it, you can get a premium for what you got.
Yeah.
You don't want to sell this because I just found out my wife is deathly ill, or my parents are moving to wherever and I got to move there because I need to be with my family. I mean, you can't, you have to be prepared, and basically, I think we can help you.
Yeah, so we do have a question that came in. It says, buying out a family member who is not a pharmacist. Is there a list somewhere of who I have to inform that I am the sole owner? So so when you, yeah, that's another difference that we didn't even touch on, is that, when you're selling as an individual, right, or you're buying out a partner, you will need to update. There isn't a list out there necessarily. You can contact us and we can kind of help, but like some of the things that you're going to have to contact is you have to update the state board, make sure the DEA, MPI, NCBDP. You'll need to update your PSAO and all your insurance contracts. So at a minimum, you need to do all of those and make sure that they know that the ownership has changed. And along those lines, when you're selling to an individual, the transfer of licenses and insurance contracts takes a lot longer, because that new buyer is going to run on a power of attorney. They're going to use your licenses for a period of time, your insurance contracts, etc. Whereas when you sell a chain, you sell it and then you close those down and it's over. So there is that's a big difference that occurs. So hopefully that helps. What are chains paying per script these days? Tim, I mean, we're seeing it all over the place, right? I mean, it is.
There's not, I used to be able to tell you it's anywhere from 10 to $28 a prescription. And, today I can tell you it's anywhere from 7 to $20 a prescription. And it all depends on what kind of business you have in your pharmacy. What is your mix of business? How much cash? Is there too much controls? Do you do, what's your deliveries? What's your 90-day fills? How much of it's Medicaid? Is it Medicaid that is at a higher profit margin? Do you have any 340B? Like, there's all these things that factor into it. For me to say that they're paying $10 a script is I mean, no, I can't
It's
say
just
that.
all over. I wish we could answer that better, because I mean, it
I'll
used
tell
to
you-
be, it was like, on average 15, $16. Now it
No,
is completely unpredictable.
Here's the deal. In the last 5 years, it's gone down.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, that is true.
That I
Yeah.
can tell you is that in the last 5 years, the value of a prescription has gone down. However, the value of money has gone up.
Yeah. So, yeah, I wish we could give you a better answer there, but it is
Sorry.
all over. And, if you've got multiple chains, you should talk, or we can help you if you want us to talk to multiple chains as well. But, it may, it may be worth $5 a script to CVS and 20 to Walgreens, just because of the mix of business. So, like, it is a little all over the place, unfortunately. All right. Well, if there's not any more questions, I think we'll wrap up, and thank you all for your time. And if you need help selling a pharmacy, reach out.
Awesome. Thank you, Owen. Thanks for being there.
We got one other question before we wrap up. $10 to $20 times what? That's a good question. So chains will pay a dollar amount, 10 to 20 in this case, times your annual prescription count. So if you fill 50,000 prescriptions at $10 a script, that's 500,000 plus inventory. And then in that case, you would also keep your own AR. They don't purchase the AR typically. So that's how they do it now. But they will eliminate delivery. They'll eliminate certain scripts. So, but in simple terms, 50,000 times 10 is 500,000. But there's scripts that they don't want, and so they will eliminate them.
Yeah, they will try to pay you the very least that they possibly can. Unless you can have the ability to be patient and get as many offers as you can and not appear desperate. The biggest mistake a seller can ever make is to appear desperate. And that's again, when you bring somebody like myself into a transaction, I'm not going to come across as I'm desperate. I'm going to protect you, the seller, from you can tell me as desperate as you are in the world, and your mom and your dad and your spouse, your girlfriend, your dog, I don't care, but you don't tell someone who wants to buy your store that you're desperate and you want to sell.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons you got a lot of value for your pharmacies is you told the chains no, I don't know how many times. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Years I told them no. Years.
He told them
no. Because now the nice thing was I wasn't desperate. but that's again like poker. I mean, in a business transaction, it is poker, Owen. I mean, it is. Yeah. It's a game. I'm trying to keep my cards to the vest. I'm trying to not they call me, I may slow play a call back just so I don't look like Bob needs to sell it really quick. Not to try to be rude, but I can't let them think that they're going to take advantage of me, because when they see that I'm weak, they start doing other stuff that then translates throughout the entire agreement. So the purchase agreement, the after the agreement, the holdbacks or whatever they create, your inventory is just, you've got to look like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's a little cold on their side, but remember, these are people who have targets and are looking to get promoted, right? And so if they can go and look, hey, look at this great deal I got, that makes them look good in their organization, right? So
Well,
they're not trying to, it's just that's the way it works, right? And some of
well,
that is natural, right? As a person, you go, oh, well, I can get a good deal here, I'm gonna go get it.
well, that person from the chain or whoever that wants to buy literally is on my side, the seller's side. They want to buy you're right. They want to
They
buy
do.
it, but my job is to give them a story that they can take back to their boss to give me more money.
Yep, agreed.
Like they need a reason to go say that Bob Brown needs $15 a script or whatever the number that we're trying to get. They need a reason to go back to him to say that. And that's where it becomes, so vitally important to negotiate this thing with a little bit of patience. But it's literally the fact that you just have to not look desperate.
Yep. Okay, I think that was it. We're gonna wrap up for real this time.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Owen.
Have a good one. Bye.
You too.